Let me read to you a passage from the second chapter of St. John's Gospel, verses 1 to 11. It's the Gospel for the Saturday before the Epiphany. St. John writes, "On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, 'They have no more wine.' 'Dear woman, why do you involve me?' Jesus replied. 'My time has not yet come.' His mother said to the servants, 'Do whatever he tells you.' Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, 'Fill the jars with water.' So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, 'Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet.' They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, 'Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best wine till now.' This, the first of his miraculous signs, Jesus performed in Cana of Galilee. He thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him." That's from John chapter 2, verses 1 to 11. Among other things, it speaks of the word of Mary. What do I mean? Well, there are numerous differences between the 3 synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark and Luke, and the Gospel of St. John. St. John, for instance, gives nothing of the infancy, though he lived with the mother of Jesus as from Christ's death. He gives practically nothing of Christ's numerous exorcisms, and his Gospel does not contain his characteristic parables. Just as an aside, though, while Christ's parables are not there, his characteristic style of teaching by means of analogy is indeed present. The Spirit is like the blowing wind, chapter 3, verse 8. There are the fields ripe for harvest, chapter 4. Christ is the Good Shepherd, chapter 10, and so forth. That having been said, there are indeed numerous differences. As an example, consider the accounts of the beginnings of our Lord's public ministry, and in particular the call of Simon Peter. In Luke's account, following his turbulent return to Nazareth, chapter 4, Christ moved to Capernaum and made his base there, chapter 4, verse 31. We notice that after the exorcism in the synagogue of Capernaum, Jesus arose and left the synagogue and entered Simon's house. How did Simon come into it? We're not told. Soon after, Christ addresses the crowd from Simon's boat. He directs Simon to make the catch of fish, then issues him with a formal call to share in his mission. Chapter 5. We have Luke's account of the choice of the 12, and we are told that Christ named Simon as Peter. Chapter 6. When we turn to the Gospel of Matthew, the call of Simon is at the start of the public ministry, chapter 4, and the list of the 12, with Simon named as Peter, is a little later, in chapter 10. A much more formal explanation is given in Matthew, in chapter 16. But what do we notice in the Gospel of St. John? John tells us that Simon and a few others of the 12 met Christ before the commencement of his public ministry, that is, soon after his baptism. It was then that Christ told him that his name would be Peter, John chapter 1, verse 42. One feature of the Gospel of St. John is the vividness of the details by means of which he describes the beginnings of our Lord's ministry. The synoptics recount the start of the public ministry, and the miracles are worked as part of it. But John tells us that, as a matter of fact, The first of his signs was at the wedding feast of Cana, and indeed that it was initiated by a word from the mother of Jesus. This is special to John. We learn from the Gospel of St. John that the first of the signs of Christ's glory that would be common in his public ministry was precipitated by a word from his own mother. A plain reading of the text suggests to us that, humanly speaking, this public beginning at Cana was not according to his initial plan. He had come to the wedding with his disciples on invitation. His mother was there. It was expected, perhaps simply presumed, that it would be a joyous wedding and Christ with his new friends would thereupon depart. His public ministry would then begin, perhaps in some synagogue in the region. But no, the wine ran out, and the mother of Jesus immediately approached her divine Son. All she said was, "They have no wine." That was all, but that was sufficient. It suggests that Mary, his mother, yearned for him to begin his great work, and this was, she felt, the opportune moment. She pushed him. "Get going," she suggested. "They have no wine." Again, the text suggests that humanly the suggestion was unexpected to Jesus. "Woman, why are you drawing me into this and starting things moving for me? My hour has not yet come." Our Lady did not say a word more, but she had no doubt that things would indeed now begin. His glory would be seen, his surpassing nature, his incomparable person, his utter magnificence, which she knew so well, would now begin to be revealed. She had put to him the situation, and she knew the ball would immediately begin to roll. The bell would toll, and the world would begin to hear. She left her beloved Son and went to the servants. "Do whatever he tells you." John chapter 3 verse 5. We know the rest. The work of the world's redemption had begun, and it had been Mary, the mother of Jesus, who by her word had touched the trigger. It had only needed a touch, and the need was met with beauty and abundance. The public work of the Messiah began, and he showed his glory. She, the woman, his mother, was the new Eve, the mother of all the living. Her seed, showing his glory, would strike the serpent's head, as had been foretold long before. A truly scriptural view of Christ includes the great cloud of witnesses that surrounds us, and foremost among those witnesses is his mother, full of grace and so powerful in her intercession. Whatever be our situation in life, Jesus Christ is there with his disciples, which is to say that Christ is there in his body, the church. We are never alone in the fulfillment of our vocation in life. Whenever there are problems, Mary, the mother of Jesus, is there. She will see that the wine has run out. Let us ask her to keep before her divine Son all our needs, and to put in her word on our behalf. She too knows what is best for us, as does, of course, supremely her Son, who is our God. Let us ever be confident in their presence and never lose our peace. All is in their hands.